What is it that makes learning realistic and meaningful from the perspective of students? And the answer for us, using the iPAC framework, is the term authenticity. Research links authentic learning to higher levels of engagement, motivation, and indeed student attainment. We've identified 3 factors that are linked to authenticity in terms of using mobile devices. The first of these is the task that is set by the teacher. The second is the tool that students use to undertake the task. And the third, the focus of this movie, is the setting in which the task is undertaken. In terms of learning, the word setting is often associated with the physical place where a learning activity takes place. And it's long been known that situating learning in more realistic places enables learners to learn more effectively. And this is referred to as situated learning. If we accept that the process of constructing knowledge is a meaning-making activity for individuals, then that process cannot easily be separated from the context in which it's made. So situated learning is learning that takes place in the same context in which it's applied. And therefore, when we use the term setting, we're really referring to the wide variety of different contexts in which learning can occur. Now, some of these are what we would refer to as physical contexts, such as classrooms or museums, but increasingly, many of them will be virtual contexts or places that are accessible through digital networks, particularly on a mobile device. For example, video conferencing. Effectively, the room is a virtual room, and participation is undertaken virtually, just as it is in something like a virtual learning environment, where the experience of participating may feel very real, but it is in fact virtual. And of course, the best example of this is probably an immersive world, like Second Life, where we actually embody the experience through the use of avatars. Here we can see how the subconstruct of setting has been set out as a continuum made up of 2 binaries. And at the weaker end of the continuum, the setting has been described as contrived. Many classroom settings are typically contrived in nature. They do not resemble real-world situations, but rather they imitate or simulate such settings. In a language lesson, for example, a teacher might ask students to imagine that they're situated in a French boulangerie, where they're asked to order a French stick. We'd describe that, in terms of setting, as rather contrived. At the stronger end of the continuum, however, we've used the term realistic to describe settings that are more authentic, bearing a greater resemblance to those that might be experienced in the real world. So, for example, if students are allowed to bring their mobile devices during a visit to a museum or a historical site, this would be classed as a highly realistic setting. This does not mean, however, that the setting can only be realistic if it takes place outside of school, on a field trip or a school visit. One of the most important, but as yet underexploited benefits of mobile technologies is their ability to link students into real-world contexts and settings that may be virtual rather than physical. This might include, for example, a video conference experience where students join an actual group of scientists, or an immersive world experience where students participate in a simulated shopping experience to practice their language skills and purchase bread, but perhaps this time working with native speakers from France itself. So how do mobile technologies help to make settings more realistic and less contrived? Well, the most obvious example would start with physical settings such as these, where you can see students using a variety of mobile devices to undertake a field trip, in this case at the seaside, where they're doing a study of the coastline. Now, this might be a geography fieldwork where they're capturing data, such as these students can be seen to be doing, but it could also be environmental, it could be to do with history. In fact, it could be to do with a wide range of different curriculum areas where students use a mobile device in an actual physical setting. And increasingly, apps such as these citizen science apps you can see in this shot allow students to capture data during a field trip and even transmit that data back to real communities of science, making this a highly realistic task, but also set in a very realistic and authentic setting. Now, increasingly, we're beginning to see mobile devices being used by subjects such as geography, environmental science, to capture data, as we can see in these images, but also to augment the experience of learners in the field. So increasingly, with augmented reality apps, we're able to overlay on top of the setting that we have in the field additional information. In this case, this is relatively social information, but it could be something that's related very much more to the curriculum, such as this example where younger students are able to visualize how dinosaurs might have roamed around the forest they're actually walking in. So here we're combining digital data produced and mediated through the mobile device with the physical setting. And this might be described as a highly realistic and situated setting and piece of learning. And finally, of course, mobile devices also allow us to undertake what's referred to as context-sensitive learning, whereby the device, because of its facilities such as GPS, knows where you are and is able to track your movements and provide additional information, in this case it's information related to your journey, alongside your actual place. So we're beginning to see, in terms of physical visits, how mobile devices can enhance the actual setting, making it more realistic. But as I said earlier, we shouldn't forget that mobile devices also give our learners access to virtual settings, which are also now highly realistic, such as Minecraft, which is an immersive world allowing students to undertake a wide range of activities, often in collaboration with others. And increasingly, as we talked about earlier, we're likely to see more immersive and virtual worlds facilitated through things like Google Glasses and more high-end equipment. This is the Oculus Rift headset, which gives learners access to highly realistic settings, but in a virtual context. So without having to physically leave the confines of the school or the classroom, they can still have the kind of high-end, realistic setting that we described earlier in this slide and presentation.